This conference will now be recorded.
Today our topic is crystallopathies. So the main disease in this crystallopathies is gout. So this gout is mainly increased, increasingly found in people who drink and who are eating red meat. So previously it is called this it's a deadly disease. History of gout. Galen described gout, which is originated from the word gutta, which is a Latin word that means a drop. He meant that it is a poisonous drop which is secreted into the joint, which causes inflammatory disease. So the major crystallopathies which causes arthritis are monosodium urate crystals, calcium pyrophosphate crystals, hydroxyapatite, and others like calcium oxalate, corticosteroid esters, and all. So these three diseases are mainly we are concerned with: monosodium urate, calcium pyrophosphate, and hydroxyapatite. So the disease in which monosodium urate crystals are deposited in the joints is gout, whereas calcium pyrophosphate depositions leads to pseudogout. The other one is hydroxyapatite crystals. So basically, gout is a inflammatory arthritis mediated by crystal. It is called autoinflammatory disease, not autoimmune. It is autoinflammatory disease due to inflammasome formation. So it is an inflammatory arthritis mediated by the crystallization of uric acid within the joints and forming tophi. So it is often associated with hyperuricemia, and the incidence of gout is 62 per 1 lakh population. So who are the patients with hyperuricemia and gout? These are the patients with increased risk. These are the patients with advanced age, usually males, and postmenopausal women. In men, we can find gout in young adults, but in women it is usually after menopause. And it can also be seen with usage of some drugs like diuretics like loop diuretics and thiazide diuretics. Both can cause gout, and low dose aspirin can cause gout. Cyclosporin, niacin, all these can cause gout. And presence of comorbidities like hypertension, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, dyslipidemia, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease also predispose to the formation of gout. And lifestyle comorbidities like obesity, diet rich in meat and seafood, high alcohol intake, frequent consumption of high fructose diet. All these lead to gout. So you have to remember it is common in men, most common in men, and in women it is seen after menopause. And drugs you have to remember diuretics is main drug which is associated with gout, and other drugs like cyclosporin, aspirin, niacin. These are the things you have to remember. These are the predisposing factors. So for the uric acid to come into the body, there are two sources. One is exogenous and other is endogenous. Exogenously, we have to take uric acid from outside. So it is dietary purine overload. When we eat meat, seafood, and all, more dietary purines will be accumulated in the body. And other thing is endogenous purine synthesis. Whenever some cells apoptize or dies, then the purine, the nucleic acid within them is converted into uric acid. So these are the two sources for uric acid accumulation in the body. And how is uric acid eliminated? Either through renal excretion is the main thing, and other thing is gut. So if there is a mismatch between production and excretion, then there will be deposition of the uric acid. There will be urate supersaturation and crystallization, which forms the gout. So the basic pathophysiology is either it is a mismatch between production and excretion. It can be either due to overproduction or under excretion. So what are the conditions where it will be overproduction? Either due to excessive dietary intake of urine containing foods like red meat, seafoods and all. And other thing is increased production of endogenous purines seen in leukemias, lymphomas and all cancer diseases. The purine production will be increased. There also we can find gout due to overproduction. Whereas gout due to urate under excretion is mainly due to kidney disease and gut disease. So the renal excretion of uric acid is mainly done like this. So whenever uric acid is entering into the glomerulus, it is completely filtered by the glomerulus. After that, what happens? Whatever is filtered, 100% it is reabsorbed into the proximal tubule. All the filtered uric acid will be reabsorbed in the proximal tubule. After that, what will happen? Here, 50% will be again secreted back in the descending loop of Henle. After the 100% absorption in the proximal tubule, again 50% will be secreted back in the descending loop of Henle. After that, what will happen? Again, 80% of the 50% secreted will be reabsorbed in the ascending loop. You might have studied this. This is countercurrent mechanism to maintain the corticomedullary difference, osmotic difference. This uric acid absorption secretion will occur. So initially 100% will be filtered in the glomerulus, then mostly it is absorbed in the proximal tubule, and 50% will be again secreted in the descending loop of Henle, whereas 80% of the, or again 40% will be reabsorbed in the ascending loop of Henle. So only 5 to 10% will be excreted in urine. So this is the basic uric acid excretion. So these are the diet: white bread or red meat. This will be containing increased uric acid levels, whereas milk, eggs and legumes and all will decrease the levels of uric acid. So will all the patients with hyperuricemia progress to gout? And the answer is no, because hyperuricemia alone does not make a diagnosis of gout. So many patients can have hyperuricemia, but only some patients, subset of people with hyperuricemia will develop gout. So it is not mandatory for all hyperuricemic patients should progress to gout. So some patients will be, mostly the patients with hyperuricemia will be asymptomatic and they require no treatment. So hyperuricemia is more than 7 milligram per deciliter. It is commonly seen in 5 to 8% of the male population. And most of the patients, about 2/3 of the patients, are forever asymptomatic. And 80% of the gouty patients have uric acid less than 9 milligram per deciliter. During the acute gout attack, the uric acid levels will be usually normal or subnormal. It is not high. So if the uric acid level is above 10 milligram per deciliter, the risk of forming gout is increased rapidly. It is the most common cause of monoarthritis in middle-aged and elderly men. 80% prevalence is there. So usually gout presents as monoarthritis. So these are the conditions associated with hyperuricemia. Already we have discussed lymphomas, myeloproliferative disorders, diabetes, psoriasis, sarcoid, glycogen storage diseases. So what will happen? whenever there is increased dietary purine intake and endogenous purine synthesis is increased, then urate accumulation will occur, which causes hyperuricemia, which can manifest as silent tissue deposition or clinically gout, or renal manifestations like stone formation, or it can be associated with cardiovascular mortality and morbidity. So these are the spectrum of manifestations due to hyperuricemia. So the gout also will have many stages. It ranges from asymptomatic hyperuricemia at one end to advanced to gout at other end, chronic gout. So in patients with asymptomatic hyperuricemia, if the hyperuricemia continues, they progress to acute gout. Acute intermittent flares will be seen, and then they will progress to chronic gout. So these are the three stages in gout. Initial stage is asymptomatic hyperuricemia. In this stage, there will not be any arthritis, and the second stage will be acute intermittent arthritis. So the attack frequency may range from weekly attacks or monthly attacks or once in 2 months and all. And the number of joint involvement will be increased. And finally, it will undergo transformation into chronic arthritis with acute exacerbations. In chronic arthritis, you will see the tophi formation and continuous arthritis will be there, and there will be superimposition of acute attacks. So it is a cycle. So whenever there is accumulation of monosodium urate crystals in the joints, it leads to inflammation. Due to inflammation, all the inflammatory cells will migrate to the joints, and there they will cause the further interleukins and TNF alpha production. And these leukocytes, what will these macrophages and all will engulf the monosodium urate crystals, and they release cytokines and enzymes, and they will undergo rupture in the joints. This will lead to further inflammation and further accumulation of uric acid crystals. So this is a never-ending cycle. So the crystals are formed, WBC is attacked, and again the cells are lysed again. The urate precipitation leads to acute gouty arthritis. Local factors like temperature, pH, trauma, joint hydration all leads to precipitation of the crystals, whereas systemic factors include hydration state, fever, drugs, alcohol, and comorbid conditions also will lead to precipitation of the crystals. So the acute gout attack usually spontaneously resolves within 10 to 15 days. How does a typical attack of gout look like? It lasts several days to several weeks. Usually affects single joint. The most common joint involved is first metatarsophalangeal joint, and it is often accompanied by fever and leukocytosis. As years progress, the attacks frequency will increase. The pain will appear last and it will disappear first. So whenever the acute attack occurs, pain is last to occur and it is first to disappear. So the first attack usually at 4th to 6th decade for men, and women it is always after menopause. And it is classically monoarticular involvement. Podagra is seen in 50% of the population with gout, and proximal joints are involved. Proximal joints and central arthropathies are uncommon in gout. So you can see here, this is podagra. There will be swelling in the first metatarsophalangeal joint. These are the tophi formation, most commonly seen in helix of the ear. Tophi are most commonly seen in helix of the ear. You can see these urate crystals accumulate into tophi, and there are bony erosions. The synovium is calcified. So the other causes of podagra are, other than gout, it can be seen in CPPD or pseudogout, hydroxyapatite, septic arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, Reiter syndrome, and rheumatoid arthritis. These are the other causes, but most commonly it is seen in gout. So how do you diagnose? Diagnosis by laboratory investigations and mainly by aspiration. Aspiration is always recommended if possible. And we have to see under the polarized microscope. The MSU crystals are negatively birefringent in polarized microscope, whereas pseudogout they are positively birefringent. Gout and sepsis can also coexist, so we have to send the fluid for analysis for gram stain and culture to rule out any infection. Serum uric acid levels can be done, but it is not confirmatory test, or it cannot exclude. If the uric acid level is normal, you cannot exclude gout, because during acute gout, the uric acid levels will be either normal or subnormal. During acute gout, X-ray is not necessary. You have to assess the risk factors. So you can do uric acid levels. There will be hyperuricemia. Leukocytosis will be seen. ESR will be elevated because inflammation is there. And synovial fluid leukocyte count will be elevated, like in septic arthritis. So you cannot differentiate like CSF. You cannot tell if the WBC count, neutrophil count is increasing. You cannot tell it is infection. During gout also, the neutrophil count will be increased. Viscosity is less compared to septic or inflammatory arthritis. So how do you differentiate? Main differentiation is by classical presentation, and other thing is culture and gram staining. So MSU needle like intracellular and extracellular crystals can be seen in light microscopy. These are negatively birefringent under polarized light microscope. So here you can see aspiration of the joint fluid. You can see the needle shaped crystals here in gram stain. So this is tophi formation. And you can see the accumulation of urate crystals even in the fingers. These are all So how do we treat acute gout? Main point you have to remember is never try to decrease the uric acid level during acute gout attack. So during acute gout attack, you should not try to decrease the uric acid level. Our main concern is to decrease the pain. So we have to give NSAIDs. So fast acting and full dose NSAIDs should be given, like naproxen, ibuprofen, and all. Other thing is colchicine. Only oral colchicine is indicated. IV colchicine is banned in all countries, so you have to give oral colchicine. It has a narrow therapeutic window. So the dose of colchicine will be 0.6 mg. You can give 8 hourly. So they say patient often run before they walk. What does that mean? Colchicine will have gastrointestinal side effects. So the patient will have diarrhea. So patient will often run before they walk. So colchicine should be given at low doses. Otherwise, you will develop toxic symptoms. So allopurinol should not be given in acute gout attacks. So the main treatment is NSAID, colchicine, and if the pain is refractory, we can give corticosteroids. Intra-articular steroids are preferred over systemic steroids. During the intercritical period, that means between two acute flare of gout attacks, there will be 70% prevalence of MSC crystals remaining in the joint. So uric acid lowering therapy includes lifestyle changes and dietary modifications, and diet high in vegetables, dairy products, and increased water consumption. They have to drink plenty of water and initiate uric acid lowering therapy. So, what are the indications for initiating uric acid lowering therapy after a acute attack? So, this should be remembered. So, we have to initiate hypouricemic therapy only if there are more than 2 clinical attacks and uric acid is more than 9 milligram per deciliter, and patient is willing to take lifelong drugs to decrease the uric acid levels in the presence of uric acid stones and tophi formation. All these are indications for initiating hypouricemic therapy after an acute attack. You should remember this. So what are the indications for initiating hypouricemic therapy? These are the main 5 indications. So hypouricemic therapy includes either we can decrease the endogenous production of the uric acid by giving xanthine oxidase inhibitors like allopurinol, febuxostat, or we can give drugs which will increase the destruction of the uric acid like uricase, or other drugs we can give which will increase the excretion of uric acid like probenecid. So these are the treatment in nutshell. You can see purine metabolism. Hypoxanthine is converted to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid by enzyme called xanthine oxidase. So if we block this enzyme, we can prevent the formation of uric acid. So xanthine oxidase inhibitors include allopurinol, febuxostat. Whereas uric acid is excreted in the urine. So uric acid reabsorption is mediated by URAT1. So this URAT1 can be inhibited by probenecid, benchbromurone, losartan, and fenofibrate. So they may ask you, a patient with history of gout comes with a hypertension. So which antihypertensive will you give? So the answer will be losartan, because losartan has uricosuric property. It can help in excretion of uric acid. So these are the FDA approved urate lowering agents like allopurinol, febuxostat. Allopurinol doses we should initiate at 100 mg OD, and then we have to increase the dose gradually. The side effects will be renal failure, bone marrow suppression, and all. So whenever we are giving allopurinol, we should check the renal function test. If the creatinine is more than 2, we should avoid allopurinol. In those patients, febuxostat is preferred. If there is a associated renal failure along with gout, we have to give febuxostat. The dose will be 40 mg to 80 mg per day. The second line drugs are probenecid, benchbromurone, and all. If it is severe and refractory, then we can go with pegloticase. Some people tried anakinra. It is anti-interleukin-1 antagonist. It is effective for acute attack, but it will not cure the disease. But for acute attacks, it will be useful. So it is best in patients who cannot take steroids or colchicine. It is expensive, but if they're affordable, we can offer anakinra for acute attacks. It is not for preventive use. So some patients will develop chronic gout. Who is not undergoing treatment for acute gout, they will progress to chronic gout. It usually presents after 10 years of the acute intermittent gout, and there will be tophi deposition, chronic swollen joints will be seen, joint destruction will be seen, and these patients require treatment with allopurinol. You can see the joint destruction and there is deforming arthritis condition. So these are what are the radiological features of gout? This is important. You can see the overhanging edges in X-ray. You will see a punched out lesions with sclerotic borders, and there will be overhanging new bone formation. That is overhanging edges. That is called Martel sign. Preservation of joint space will be seen till late stages, and there will be degenerative changes. Here you can see there are also lesions and formation of new bone. This is overhanging bony edge called Martel sign. Here also you can see punched out lesions. These are all erosions caused due to accumulation of uric acid crystals. Here also you can see nicely it is eroded. Erosions can be seen clearly. In ultrasound, you will see double contour sign. This is also important. Double contour sign is seen in gout. And Martel sign, overhanging edges is called Martel sign. These two you have to remember. This is the normal foot, and in chronic gout, you can see accumulation of the deposits and formation of new bone with deforming arthritis. So main thing is dietary modifications. You should advise the patient to have daily exercise and weight control, and to avoid white rice, red meat, white bread, potatoes, pastas, and butter sweets. These food should be sparingly used, and we should encourage them to stop alcohol intake, because alcohol will precipitate the accumulation of uric acid. Now we'll discuss about pseudogout. Pseudogout is why it is called pseudogout. The symptoms are and clinical manifestations are similar to gout. So how do we differentiate between gout and pseudogout? These are the differences. Gout most commonly affects the metatarsophalangeal joint, hallux, and it is seen in younger males or postmenopausal women, whereas pseudogout is seen in elderly males, very old males it will be seen, and most common joint involved in pseudogout is knee joint, followed by wrist and ankle. Here, small joints are not involved. So these are the clinical associations with pseudogout. They include aging, previous joint surgery like meniscectomy and previous joint trauma, familial types or amyloidosis, hyperparathyroidism, hemochromatosis, hypomagnesemia, familial hypocalciuria, hypercalcemia and hypomagnesemia can cause pseudogout, and hypophosphatasia, Wilson's disease, or chronosis. These are all predisposing features for pseudogout. Here the characteristic feature is chondrocalcinosis. That means calcification of the cartilage. This is the important point. Chondrocalcinosis will be seen in pseudogout. So whenever you take X-ray, you can see nicely the joint cartilage will be calcified. Acute arthritis caused by deposition of calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate crystals, CPPD crystals, which will cause inflammation. It will perfectly mimic the gout during acute flare. Attacks before 50 years are uncommon in pseudogout. So the clinical clues will be knee joint involvement, and usually older people will be presented. Radiologically, we can see the calcification of hyaline and fibrocartilage found in the knee menisci, acetabular labrum. So here you can see the knee joint X-ray. You can see here the cartilage is calcified. This white thing. Usually cartilage should be seen as black, but here it is calcified. So it is hyperdense. Here also you can see the chondrocalcinosis. That is the characteristic feature for pseudogout. Here also you can see calcification of the articular cartilage. Arthroscopy showing the calcification of the synovium, this cartilage. So how do we diagnose? Laboratory diagnosis again by fluid analysis. CPPD crystals are visualized under polarized microscope. MSC crystals are negatively birefringent, whereas here they are weakly positive birefringency. And the crystals are more difficult to detect than MSC crystals because they are smaller in size and intralysosomal location. Mostly they will be intracellular. They are square or rhomboid shape. Here, multiple crystals are seen intracellularly and extracellularly, both. And their shape is rhomboid or square shape. MSC crystals are needle shaped. So treatment will be aspiration of the involved joint and steroid, intraarticular steroid injection. We have to exclude the infection. Usually the symptoms will subside on its own, or we have to give NSAIDs. Other type of crystallopathies include hydroxyapatite, calcium oxalate, calcium carbonate. The characteristic feature here is hydroxyapatite crystals are non-birefringent, so you cannot tell by looking at light microscopy. In light microscopy, we cannot differentiate hydroxyapatite crystals. This is the important point in hydroxyapatite. So it will present as acute monoarthritis, pseudogout, or acute calcific tendinitis or bursitis. Most common presentation will be in the form of bursitis or tendinitis. This is also associated with scleroderma, dermatomyositis. Heterotopic calcification can be seen. Milwaukee shoulder and Round-Dent syndrome. These are all associated with hydroxyapatite accumulation. So it is usually a periarthritis. So the inflammation will be around the joint, not within the joint. There will be intense inflammation. It will look like a septic arthritis. Patient will have high-grade fever, severe pain will be there, swelling will be there. But the thing is here, interestingly, the synovial fluid is often non-inflammatory. So the WBC count will be lower side or normal. So we can exclude it from septic arthritis. In septic arthritis, WBC count will be very high. But here in hydroxyapatite pseudogout, it is low, normal. It also can cause podagra in a younger woman. You can see the calcification around the joint, periarticular. This is X-ray showing calcification due to apatite crystals surrounding the eroded joint. Electron microscope demonstrate dark needle-shaped apatite crystals within the vacuole of the synovial fluid mononuclear cell. You can see the needle-shaped things, black things. These are all calcium hydroxyapatite crystals. So how do we treat? This is also symptomatic management. Just like pseudogout, we have to give NSAID or intraarticular steroids. Anakinra also has been tried in some patients. They say intraarticular EDTA also helps in calcium hydroxyapatite crystals. So these are the treatment options we have. You can see here the pain will be severe and there is calcifications. Any doubts? Yes, still in Which semester are you now?
9th sem, sir.
9th sem. Okay. So immunology is mostly finished for you. I don't know in the next schedule. All other systems are finished, huh?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Immunology mostly we finished. If you have any other topics, if you have interest, you can ask. We'll see if there is any change in schedule. We'll change the system, or you can keep an exam on
Okay,
the
sir.
immunology. Whatever you like to discuss and tell me. If you want some self-assessment or exam in immunology, we'll conduct next week.
Okay, sir.
Sure. That's me. Okay. Thank you.